Hello, my name is Miriam McLemore, and I have the great privilege today to share with you a presentation on using the cloud to reach your digital potential. I'm an enterprise strategist with AWS, which is a great group of former CIOs, CTOs. We have a CISO in our group who work with our customers as executive advisors. Prior to joining AWS, I was the corporate CIO at the Coca-Cola Company. I was with Coca-Cola for many years in a variety of roles. I worked in finance, I worked in marketing, I worked in the North America business unit, and then spent the last dozen years of my career in IT, retiring from Coke as the corporate CIO. And often we find that it's helpful to our customers to hear from someone who sat in the seat and had to deal with defining IT strategy, working with business partners, dealing with challenging environmental times and budget cuts and different type of industry anomalies that may occur. And I loved my time at Coca-Cola and have now been with AWS for 4 years. So thrilled to have some time with you today. Just to kick off, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the strategy that we were driving at Coke, because I think it's relevant to our conversation today about leveraging cloud to reach your digital potential. At Coke, I really had three primary strategies that we were driving. We were working hard to digitize for the consumer, so to improve consumer experiences. We also had a strategy to digitize for our customers, so the B2B aspects of the business, improving route to market, improving purchase intent at shelf, and really working with retailers that sold the wide array of company products. And then finally, had a strategy for digitizing internal to the enterprise and improving our speed and agility as a obviously older company, 130 plus years old, operating in such a wide variety of markets, over 210 countries, with a wide variety of brands and a franchise bottling system where we needed to bring data together to report results and to analyze markets and make decisions about beverage portfolios and where we were investing. And so those three strategies were really core to my conversations with the business leaders across the Coca-Cola system. And also, cloud was such a key element to our journey. The first thing we did was move digital properties to the cloud, and that certainly got us moving and built the partnership that we have in place today at AWS. And so I just wanted to give you a little bit of that background, because I'll refer back to some of the work that we did at Coke, and now also some of the work I've had the great opportunity to do with customers around the world in the role that I have as an executive advisor at AWS. One of the biggest conversations that I have with our customers is about unlocking business agility and making decisions faster. And I love this definition from Peter Weil. He's with MIT, and I like the focus on not just thinking agilely, right? But in today's world, with the speed of business and the speed of disruptive technologies, you actually have to move so that your organization is able to act agilely and then feels like it is an agile environment in which your team and your employees are operating. Through the work that our team has done, we've talked to hundreds of customers and developed a list of characteristics that we believe describe an agile organization. And the first one that I start with is a deeply shared purpose and a focus on the customer journey. That is certainly true here at Amazon and AWS, and it is more and more often true in the customers that I have the opportunity to work with, getting very clear on who the customer is that you are serving and working to improve that customer experience, whether it's B2B, B2C, or internal customers that you may have. But being clear about the purpose is an enabler of agility. Secondly, having autonomous cross-functional teams, and I'm sure you've heard that from us and other companies, the power of empowering teams is just so vital to, again, enable speed in your organization. We don't have time for hierarchies and moving information up a chain and down another chain and back up another chain and back across and down another chain. We have to empower our teams to work at speed. But that doesn't mean it's anarchy, right? You need standardized ways of working so people understand expectations of their team and how they fit within the broader ecosystem. And those standardized ways of working in a common language are absolutely critical for that. But if you can get to those smaller teams with the focus on the customer journey, you can also then democratize experimentation because people have an objective that they're experimenting to solve for or to address a need or a problem or invent a new market opportunity for your organization. And all of that, of course, has to get measured. We are very much a performance-oriented organization at Amazon, and we measure all that we do and manage by KPIs. And so having that performance orientation is a characteristic that we see of companies moving faster. And to have that, you got to have a data-driven culture, right? You have to have the data that backs up those KPIs. And, it's just not sufficient today to work on gut feel because there is so much data that can be used to automate different decisions that might be made, whether it's in an application or in sensors or in other parts of your business. So getting that data-driven culture in place. And that implies actually a learning culture because you're learning and experimenting with new sources of data and insight for your organization. And all of that is things that advanced technologies can leverage, and certainly having the right tools in the hands of your organization is critical. So those are, the top 8 characteristics in the conversations that I've had with companies that really demonstrate the transformation or the move to a more agile model. So because that's what I think we're all trying to figure out how to do is how to transform your business, how to operate in this new world of digital and disruptive technologies, how to really meet those consumer expectations. And certainly Amazon has been part of driving those expectations even higher. But we also operate in a digital economy. We certainly have all seen that via this pandemic and gotten better at it. And as we've gotten better at it, your customers and consumers have gotten better at this digital economy and have expectations that you need to be able to deliver against. And certainly the pandemic has also taught us about the globalization and geopolitical forces at play. And so I certainly have worked in very large global organizations, but even smaller local organizations are impacted by the global economy. And, as a result, where do we see people investing in these new models, in these new environment that we're all operating in? And it's a lot about hyper automation, using data, using insights to automate, using robotics potentially to automate, using sensors is certainly an area, and it's an area, of course, that we are investing in on behalf of our customers to provide new products and services. Data democratization, I talked about being data driven and democratizing that data so that you have citizen access to data versus having it locked up in silos is so important. And it is the thing you need to do before you decide all the data and platforms that you're going to use. You've got to have a data strategy in place. A culture of transparency and traceability, whether that's product traceability or document and data traceability, certainly transparency within and across your organization. I've spoken to many companies where transparency certainly has improved, but I think that's an area where we see our customers certainly investing and connecting the dots through their value chain. The empowered edge, and we certainly feel that that is a critical component for many companies, is getting compute closer to where the work is being done. And so capabilities to empower the edge, we are very much investing in, and again, on behalf of our customers, because that's what they are asking for. Autonomous things, whether that's vehicles or ships or robotics like we have in our fulfillment centers, or drones, such a wide variety of autonomous things that are coming into play in even our daily lives. And then security, AI security particularly, but security is always job zero and an investment focus for our organization and for almost all customers that I interact with. Security is at the top of the page. So, that is where we see people investing for innovation, but it's very important, even back to the quote from Peter Weil, that you partner that innovation with execution, right? And that again goes to those smaller teams and allowing people to innovate on your behalf of your company, your employees, and your customers. And certainly that is the culture that we live in at Amazon. And some companies, when I speak to them at first, think that they don't have the edge that they need. But my belief is all successful companies have innovation in their DNA. Coke, as an example, of course, was a cough syrup, so it certainly was a startup at one point in its history. But change is hard. There's no getting around the fact that change is hard. Established processes, I find, are often in the way. Over time, large companies put in processes, whether they be a legal process or a procurement process or a finance process or a PMO process or a security process, to protect the company or protect data or protect the environment. But often what happens over time is those processes stop focusing on the business value they were meant to drive. And there's a lot of time paid and attention paid to just executing the process. And so I would suggest to you that you might, if you feel like you're moving slow, need to take a look at your processes and make sure that the people responsible for those processes are incented to drive work to market, to create value, versus stop work, because often those processes are metriced on saying no and stopping work, and that inhibits speed and the agility that you might be looking for. Certainly there's cultural resistance to change. The not invented here, or throwing up security concerns, or throwing up, risk concerns. There's a lot of cultural resistance to working in a different way. It makes people uncomfortable, for sure. They have to learn new skills. And so that certainly can be a challenge. And your existing infrastructure can be a challenge. You're dragging a lot into the future. And so it is worthwhile to go back and take a full review and streamline your existing portfolio of technology so that you can step into the future a lot lighter and a lot more agilely. And I think the challenge in front of most enterprises really is unblocking innovation. If you have this innovation in your DNA, you have a culture that wants to innovate, you've got to get the barriers out of the way and take advantage of your strengths, your points of competitive advantage. Know what is driving your bottom line, and get out of the commodity type of work that isn't differentiating your business. And so I think it's much more, at least in my conversations, an organizational challenge versus a technology challenge. The technology works. Certainly, if you can get your organization in a mindset that you enable it to work as designed, and don't highly customize it, and use the power of things like cloud. Don't just build a data center in the cloud, right? You got to actually re-architect and use the power of cloud to get the benefits that you have been promised. And so I do find a lot of the companies that I speak with have to spend a lot more time on the organization and cultural change, that then the technology is pretty straightforward. A few examples from customers I've had the opportunity to work with. Formula One, of course, is a fun customer to have the opportunity to work with, but it is such a great demonstration of the power of data and the speed at which data has to be made available to the drivers, to the crew, and to the fans, because F1 is very much focused on fan engagement and leveraging data to get fans closer to the drivers, closer to the race. So there are a lot of wonderful things that we'd love to share with you about that use case. Lyft is another great use case that I've used Lyft, well, certainly pre-pandemic constantly, but now starting to again. And so excited about the things that Lyft is investing in, to really be a multimodal transportation company, whether it allows you to, hire bicycles as well as cars, and has chosen to go all in with AWS to enable many of those capabilities. Another, so maybe not as upfront as exciting, but AIG in the agricultural space. We talked about transparency and traceability, and certainly product traceability, product conditions as the product's being stored, having data and being data driven so that you can make the right decisions about inventory and quality checks that need to be done in the agriculture space. And so I love the AGI story, and we would love to share that with you if that makes sense and is of interest to you. At Amazon, and I've loved my journey at Amazon because of the culture and because of the mindset that exists at Amazon. We really do live by the leadership principles that drive our business globally. We also live by this concept that it's always day one for our business, that it absolutely requires you to lean in every day, and that it's not okay to sit back and relax and decide we're good enough, we're profitable enough. And I love that lean in culture. It gives a very large organization still that, you're up on your toes, you're leaning in, you're expected to lead, you're expected to invent and simplify on behalf of the organization. And when I say you, that you means every employee at Amazon and AWS. So I love that mindset of thinking like a startup and innovation and growth being first and then profit second, because we believe that being patient is important to let ideas evolve. And if we are doing the right things by our customers, we will in turn do well. We live by small teams, and so a large company can do that. If you're worried and wondering if that's possible, now granted, Amazon and AWS grew up that way, so it's easier. Doesn't have to make that dramatic culture change, but I have seen many companies be able to make the shift, and you just got to find a place to start um, and have impact. It needs to be a part of your business that matters. So that when you demonstrate a new way of working, people pay attention and it is a good use case within your organization. But it's very important with these small teams, if you're going to empower them, that you have to embrace failure. Failure is such a critical part of being able to actually invent, innovate, and empower your team. Because if they're not allowed to fail, then they're not going to take full accountability for driving and risk taking. And so embracing failure is a huge part of the culture, certainly at Amazon and certainly at companies that are changing the world. Innovation Darwinism, I love this concept. At Amazon, because we believe in trying hundreds of new ideas, because we're a performance oriented business and we operate based on KPIs. We believe that we will manage through, even if there's some overlap between ideas. We believe it is better to have two of something than none. And oftentimes I see companies stuck because they're trying to get everyone to agree on a single path and on the way to go. And we are more willing to try a multitude of ideas, even live with some overlap, and let the KPIs bear it out. And then the strongest ideas will wind up surviving. And I believe that is what enables Amazon and AWS to innovate across such a variety of domains. It is just fascinating to work in an organization that enables that level of autonomy, innovation, but has very high expectations on taking responsibility, embracing risk and failure, thinking through a correction of errors when there is a failure or a problem, and reapplying those learnings. And that is really where the leadership principles of Amazon and AWS come into play. Is, we ask, one of our leadership principles is to dive deep. We make sure as we invest in this variety of areas that we have dug into the data, that we're aware of the indicator, we have the right metrics, we understand the business that we are entering. We certainly also expect in our all of our teams to be customer obsessed, to start with the customer and work backwards and remove friction from the customer interaction. And so that, those principles, and there are now 16, we've just recently added two more, which I very much love, that they are living, breathing principles that are constantly reviewed and updated as our environment evolves and our country and world evolves. So it's an exciting time to be in and around technology. And I hope that I've shared a few things with you today that inspire you and your organization to drive change, to become more agile and leverage cloud and the technologies that cloud enables to drive better outcomes for your business and your organization. If you're interested in learning more, we have a very significant training and certification programs available to you. We would love you to tap into any of these resources. We constantly are revising and adding new capabilities. You can visit aws.training/enterprise if to see some of the resources out there, or certainly reach out to your account team and they will be very pleased to help you with these different capabilities. That is one of the things that, you know, I didn't do enough of when we started our cloud journey. I trained our architects, but I did not train the wider staff. And so in round two, I came back and trained many more people. That created a culture that had the same language, that understood the same things, that then could build capabilities. And so training is powerful for your organization. It's powerful for your team and your employees. That is one of the things that certainly demonstrates that you're investing in your people. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions that you're able to participate in.